My name's John Shackleton. I work for the British Council. Normally I'm based in Cairo. I look after our teacher development work for the Middle East and North Africa region. I'm joined by my colleagues, Nora from Bahrain, Temar, also based in Cairo, our technical guru, and of course Hala, who's going to be giving the presentation today. So welcome to you all. That's the back office team, and Hala, our presenter. For regular attendees, you will know this is the third in our series of webinars, Ask Hala. We're offering them once a month. They've got a regional focus, and they're based on the experience that Hala and the rest of the team has got that's peculiar and specific to this region. The first two webinars, if you cast your minds back, we looked at synchronous platforms. So we looked at the example of Teams as a good example of live real-time teaching. Then in the second webinar, we looked at Facebook and WhatsApp, so how to use social media platforms for professional learning. And we're closing the circle a little bit today by looking at asynchronous platforms. So in a sense, these are the three, I suppose, main tools that we need to actually get into that digital online space. So we need platforms for teaching synchronously. We need communities through social media platforms like Facebook and WhatsApp to add value to our synchronous work. And the final thing, I suppose, in that trio of really useful platforms is the asynchronous platform. So platforms that learners and also teachers, of course, through their communities of practice, that they can access in their own time, at their own pace, a repository for the content that you would like to share with your learners or your colleagues. And these asynchronous platforms, rather, that Hala is going to be talking about, they're to be used as standalone learning opportunities or alongside the two other things that we've spoken about, asynchronous teaching platforms and also the social media sites, Facebook and WhatsApp. And Hala is going to look at asynchronous platforms through the example of Edmodo, which is a very common asynchronous platforms that lots of teachers around the world use. And she's going to take a very practical look at Edmodo and asynchronous platforms in general, with some good practical examples of what you can do, and also, along with Temar, a step-by-step guide to how you set up your account, how you get familiar with the functionality of the platform. Okay then, so I'm going to hand over to Hala now, who's going to begin her presentation.
Hi everyone, thank you very much for coming to our third webinar. It's really always good to see you here. And today, as John said, we're going to talk about asynchronous platforms with focus on Edmodo as an example of that. And just, to have a quick flashback, this is the third in a series, and in the first two webinars we covered Microsoft Teams and Facebook and WhatsApp for teaching and professional development. And in today's webinar, actually, we're going to cover these points. We're going to talk about the asynchronous teaching in the broad sense. Then we're going to discuss why and when to use asynchronous teaching. And we're going to give you our top tips for asynchronous teaching, but also our key considerations when you decide to move your teaching to asynchronous platforms. And we'll have a deep dive on Edmodo from two perspectives, the technical perspective as well as the pedagogic perspective, and we'll give you some practical teaching ideas. And I hope you find that a bit useful. So, we've been talking about two main types of teaching, the synchronous versus the asynchronous teaching. And I wonder if you know the main differences between both teaching modes. So simply, the synchronous teaching is teaching that happens in real time. In other words, it happens while you and your learners exist and interact together through the same virtual space, like what we're doing now. I talk to you and you can listen to me and you can send me your questions through this same virtual space and at the same time. Another example of the synchronous platforms is Zoom. While asynchronous teaching means teaching that occurs through online channels, it happens online through online channels, but there is no real-time interaction. The interaction between you and your learners happens but not at the same time. And one example of this is Edmodo. Now I'm going to ask you a question. It's a tricky, naughty question, but I want you to try to guess the best answer. I'm going to tease your brains a little bit. So I'm sure you recognize the movie and you recognize the music theme, and we have the three famous characters, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now I want you to think a little bit about what is the good, what is the bad, and what is the ugly when we think about synchronous and asynchronous teaching. I know it's a tricky question, but I want you to think deeply. If you've got two choices, the synchronous and asynchronous teaching, what is the good, what is the bad, and what is the ugly? There is no good or bad. We can't say that synchronous is good and asynchronous is bad, or vice versa. Every platform has got its perks and it has got its own shortcomings. It really depends on your level of familiarity with the platform, your local context, your knowing of your learners' needs, your national curriculum, your Ministry of Education teaching plans. It really depends. Both modes are good, both modes are beneficial. It's only about how you use them. The ugly thing is really when we don't keep an open mind to the available options, and we don't show an adequate level of flexibility to the options we have and the circumstances we're facing. So it's never either or. It's not synchronous is good or asynchronous is not good. It's actually the experience has shown that effective remote teaching requires a combination of both. We've been teaching remotely, we've been teaching and training remotely for 5 months now, and I think our experience can speak better on behalf of ourselves, and the combination of both synchronous and asynchronous learning or teaching or training is the most effective model. But why asynchronous platforms? Why do we think asynchronous platforms could be a good option for some teachers? First, it promotes peer collaboration outside the limitation of a class schedule. So if you have scheduled live sessions and students must come to your live sessions or live classes, like let's say twice a week in a given time, the asynchronous platforms gives them the opportunity to collaborate in peers outside this strict schedule. It also allows the learners to reach out for help when they need it. I mean, you can give me a live lesson now and everything is just going well, and I understand what you're saying, I'm on track, but after you finish, I realize that I have some questions. I realize that I still need some extra help. So how can I reach out to you if I still need some questions? The answer is the asynchronous platform. I go there and I reach out. Because I have, as a student, I have the materials packed and stored there somewhere asynchronously on a platform, it gives me the opportunity really to study the materials in depth, and I can take as long time as I like, as needed. It's really self-paced. It's me who controls the pace, or how much time I need to study this or to internalize this amount of information. By doing this actually makes the whole experience a richer and a more personalized experience, because it's me who decides how far I need to study this or how much time do I still need to study this. And there is also really an overlooked benefit of the asynchronous platforms is that you have everything stored in one place. It's like the one-stop shop. You have all the materials, the readings, assignments, the quizzes, the recordings, everything stored in one place. So when you have, if you're a learner and you have access to everything and everything is related to one topic and everything, all of these things are stored in one virtual place, you can study this more effectively. You can relate to the topics and you can connect to the information with each other. That's also an important problem, an important point really, is that it creates the sense of community and engagement. So learners and teachers feel they belong to a group. They are part of a community because they interact with each other. There is one space. It's like a virtual classroom where everything is there. Your comments are there, your peers' pictures are there, their names are there. So it creates this sense of community. And by doing all of this, we actually promote an important aspect of learning, which is the independence or the autonomy. We'd like to develop by the end of this era, maybe it doesn't end, but by doing all of this remote delivery, we'd like to develop a generation of independent and autonomous learners.
I'm just going to leap in there just to confirm our kind of focus, both with teachers and with learners, that is such an important element of what we're doing, that classroom time is limited. So the more opportunity, the more independent the learners are, more independent we are as individuals, then the more time we have outside of formal learning opportunities for learning. So it's a really, really important part of what we were doing. We've got some questions that are coming in, and we haven't forgotten about them. We will be dealing with them when the time comes. So keep those questions coming in. Thank you very much.
Of course. Yes, to build on this important point, John, you mentioned the time of the live class is limited, and we really need to extend this learning experience. And asynchronous platforms really come in handy here, and you can pack more into the class space, and you can share more resources, and you can give more opportunities of practice for the students to practice after the class time. So learning is extended literally here. So when to use asynchronous platforms? What are the conditions where you decide to move to asynchronous platforms? It happens in some parts of the world that learners and teachers do not exist in the same time zone. So to overcome the difference in time, you can teach asynchronously, and this is what we call flexibility. Also, and of course, you all know that the internet connectivity issue, and it's an ongoing issue in some parts of the world. When streaming videos or something like we're doing now is impossible, asynchronous platforms could be helpful here, and we call this affordability. If you have large groups of learners and it's impossible to cram all of them in one live session, you'd like to split them into smaller groups, then you give them separate tasks, separate timelines, and this is what we call the practicality. And last but not least, and this is really important point, guys, is when, in some parts of the world, students cannot commit to a strict class schedule. They cannot come to your class on time because of some family issues or some family commitments, or they have some physical disabilities that hold them from sitting in front of a screen for a specific time. And this is what we call inclusivity. So what are our top pedagogic tips for asynchronous teaching? First, you need to review your syllabus with a bird's eye view. You need to review the whole syllabus and look at your learning objectives for the whole term, not only for a specific lesson, because you need to decide which part of the term that needs extra reading materials, which part of the syllabus that needs you to record a lesson and post it on the platform, which type that needs the students to go and do their independent research on the internet. So you need to decide beforehand what your whole term would look like on the platform. It's also important to communicate with your students, because the live interaction, like this momental interaction is not there. So communication in asynchronous teaching is really even more important than synchronous teaching. It's very important to spend some time to set expectations and write down and post clear instructions. And it's really important to respond to the discussions and the questions posted by the students on the platform, because one of the shortcomings of asynchronous teaching is isolation and apathy. The students might have this feeling of apathy, like they are isolated, they are not connected to a supportive teacher. The asynchronous platform is not just a space to post a question, but make sure you also make it as a comfortable environment. It's a safe space, and it should be a safe space for learners to ask their questions, but also to let off some steam and to talk about their learning difficulties and the difficult parts of the course they struggle studying or struggle understanding. And there is this our little tip to keep the sense of humor, and because always a little humor here and there and every time and every now and then wouldn't do any harm. On the contrary, it would promote the sense of community, and it would develop your rapport with the learners. Don't forget to apply the 3 R's techniques. The 3 R's is rules, routine, and reward. So set rules and get them to stick to the rules by sticking to a routine. I mean, if we have a routine through which we apply the rules, then people will stick to the rules, and you can generate the rules from themselves. It doesn't have to come from you, it might come from them. You can have a session, or you can start a discussion on the platform or on the rules they'd like to have in the class. And of course, the last R is very important, is to reward the students who stick to the rules and to follow the routine. Sometimes you'll get individual questions from individual learners through emails or WhatsApp or whatever. Please steer them back to the forum, steer them back to the platform where they can discuss as a whole group, because the answer you will give them, it could be also beneficial to somebody else on the platform, and they can get answers not only from you but from each other. And this will promote the group dynamics, really. It will become an organic group. It will grow by itself. Sometimes asynchronous platforms and even synchronous platforms go quiet. They go silent. So it's always useful if you go and give your learners a little push by posting a simple question, something like, how is everybody doing? How are you doing with the upcoming assignment? Are you ready? How are you holding up with the quarantine? Something like this, just to keep them attentive and connected. And of course, always set tangible deadlines and have a check-in points to keep everyone on track and for you to be on top of things. So while moving, John, you'd like to say something?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna leap in there if I could. Yeah, I think that your top pedagogical tips there, I think is really interesting, and they're spot on. And I think what they go to show is that, in a sense, nothing has really changed, and in a sense, those same really important things that teachers have always been doing in face-to-face interventions, they remain the same in the virtual delivery environment as well. You know, you need to think about what it is, what your outcomes are. You need to engage with the students and reward them. So those fundamental principles of teaching, I don't think have changed really. It's just that the mechanisms, and we would argue the opportunities to do things differently, but with the same principles, have increased now. So to some extent, this is an opportunity that we need to grasp. Before you move on, I just wanted to pick up on two questions that are more general. There was a question earlier about formative assessment in the online environment, and to say that we'll be running a webinar where that is the focus. So we'll be looking at that in detail as part of the Ask Hala webinar series. And also a really good question, but a really big question, which is what makes a good teacher? Okay, we could spend the rest of our lives discussing that one. A good starting point, and we'll put the we'll put the link in the chat. A good starting point for this is the British Council's CPD framework for teachers, which is a way of describing and thinking about good practice when it comes to teaching. And also one of the other elements of what we're doing through this program, we'll be looking at how we use that framework to inform what makes a good remote delivery teacher as well. That's the something that we'll also be coming back to look at. Sorry, Hala.
That's okay, John. I think the point you made earlier, John, is very important. It's yes, pedagogy comes over technology. It's not because we're here remotely and we're talking about asynchronous platforms and technology. It doesn't mean that pedagogy is not important anymore. No, the top pedagogic tips you can see on the screen now actually are thumb rules for any kind of teaching: synchronous, synchronous, face-to-face, real life, anything. The only thing that changed is our way of teaching, where we exist, we and the learners. That's the only change. But your teaching and your teaching quality is still a priority, still comes on the top of the list. So we're moving now to the key consideration when moving to asynchronous teaching. Just four essential questions really you need to think about when you decide to move to asynchronous teachings. It's how and when will you provide feedback? When you were in the live sessions, you just give the feedback instantly. Now, think about how you're going to give feedback after they leave the live session. You might like to schedule certain posts at certain times of the week where you step in and give feedback on assignments or answer questions. Also, how will you make lessons accessible and entertaining? Again, we'd like to recap here on the issue of isolation and apathy. To avoid this, make sure your content is always entertaining and engaging. And we'll talk about this in a few minutes during the webinar. How will you promote higher order thinking skills? I think that's a very important point here, because it's not because it's an asynchronous platform, it's all about quizzes and simple questions and MCQ questions, multiple choices questions. It can also be supportive for you guys to design higher order thinking assignments. And if you'd like to read more about the HOT versus the LOT, the HOT is the higher order thinking and the LOT is the lower order thinking skills. And if you'd like to read more about Bloom's taxonomy, it really gives you a very good insight about what kind of activities you'd like to design and what kind of assignments you'd like to give your learners to measure higher or lower order thinking skills. So I think also getting them to do small projects and small presentations or small pieces of research on asynchronous platforms could be useful to promote higher order thinking skills. And how will you divide units into smaller lessons? Although we spoke about looking at the whole syllabus for the term, but also it's a good when it comes to the flow of information and the flow of your of your posting on the platform, I think you need to divide this amount of knowledge and information into smaller lessons or bite-sized lessons, so that it becomes easier for the students to digest and internalize and think about. We're moving now to Edmodo. John, do you have something to say before we deep dive into Edmodo?
No, not really. I think there is a number of questions that are to some extent a little bit technical about Edmodo, so it's great that we're moving on to look at that now. Questions around using the application or using the web-based version. Questions around how does it compare to other kinds of asynchronous platforms. So hopefully we will address those questions which are both technical and propositional in what's coming up next. Yeah, no, great.
Cool, nice. So let's have a look at a couple of quotes or what the teachers around the world think about Edmodo. So the quote you're looking at on the screen now is from Mr. Fairfield, and this teacher thinks that Edmodo was very useful for him or her. For him, it's Mr. because Edmodo enabled his shy students to come and talk, because in real life classes they wouldn't talk because they felt intimidated, they felt shy. So Mr. Fairfield thinks that Edmodo is particularly useful for introverts and shy students, because they can just, you know, they can interact from behind the screen without expecting an instant answer. Another quote from another teacher, Chef Carey, and she thinks, or he thinks, that because there is a similarity between Facebook and Edmodo, it simply makes it popular, and it makes it appealing to many students. You know, the likes and those features that are very similar to Facebook. Now we'll move on to the technical part, and I'd like to hand over to my colleague Tamer, who will talk to you about the technicalities and how to set up an Edmodo account. Tamer, over to you.
Thanks a lot, Hala. Hi everyone, my name is Tamer. I'm Regional English Project Officer for Middle East and North Africa. Thank you for joining our third Ask Hala webinar, which is using Edmodo. Today I will talk about account creation at Edmodo website, and please ask your questions, your technical questions, and put them in the Q&A box, in the question and answer box. So for how to create Edmodo account. So in order to create an Edmodo account, first of all, you need to go to the website, which is www.edmodo.com, and then click on sign up button in the top right. So after that, you will find three account types. So which is you have to decide which is the one you have to choose. So choose the right one for you. So we have teacher's account, we have student account, and we have parent account. So most of us here are, and all of us here are teachers. So we need teacher's account. If you have a children in the school, so you need to create a parent account. If you are a student, so you need to create a student account. We will go briefly in each of these accounts type. So first of all, for creating account for teachers. So how to create a Edmodo account if you are a teacher? You can sign up using your, it's very easy way to do that and to sign up using your Gmail account or using your Microsoft email address, or another way. So you need to fill some tabs manually, like your email address, your password, confirm your password, and make sure to make it strong, and the school code. So let's describe a bit about what is school code. School code, it's an optional, so you don't have to fill it, or if you have it, you can fill it in the creation process. So you don't need to fill it except if you receive it from your school's admin user. which is the admin users on Edmodo at your schools. After that, then you need to activate your account by clicking the link. You know, if you want to create any account at one of the social media websites, so you need to verify the account. So you receive a verification email. So please check your inbox to activate your Edmodo account. And if you did not find it in the inbox, so you can find the verification link at the spam or at junk mail section. So let's see now the difference between what teacher account can do and what teacher account cannot do. So for example, teacher account can create and join classes and can create groups. So if you are a teacher, you can create and you can join classes or groups. You can add students account or invite members with a code or link to your class or group. You can post to a class or your group, and you can like, you can communicate, you can comment on the post. It's something like the social media and how to interact at the social media platforms. You can manage the class, and you can manage your class and your group members and moderate posts. You can create and administer digital assessments and quizzes. You can share folders for all class or groups members. You can discuss ideas, you can share resources. You can explore free teaching resources and educational apps. Get unlimited file storage in their library. You can send message to your student. You can send a message to other parents. You can send message to another teachers. You can create a group conversation with multiple students. So this is what we can do using our teacher's account. What we cannot do, we cannot send messages to students that they aren't connected to our classes. So if the student is not in your class, so you are not able to send him or her a quick message. Now, yeah, thank you, Hala. So now, so we need now to create a student account. So this is like an advice if you want to advise your students, and if you want to encourage your students or let them how to create student account. So first of all, you can sign up as a student the same way for creating a teacher account using your Gmail or your Microsoft email address, or you need to fill some tab manually, like class or school code, your username, your email. The email is optional here, your password, and your confirmed password. So let's describe what is the class or school code. The class code, so for example, if you are a teacher and you have a class, so you can send your class code to your students. So the students, once he or she will create the student account, can enter the class code. And what is the school code? The school's admin in your school can send the school code to the student. So if you are a student and you have a school code, you can ask the administrators in your schools to advise the school code in order to create a student account. So it's very important to note that filling the code is required in order to register. So excuse me. So you are not able to create student account without adding and filling the code, the schools or class code. So what student account can do and what student account cannot do. So student account can join a class and group with a private code or invitation, post to a class or group and like, comment or on posts. They can submit digital assessment and quizzes, access folders shared by their teachers, which is you, explore free learning resources and educational applications, get unlimited file storage in your backpack, organize tasks and set custom notification with the planner, send a direct message to your teacher or your parent if you are a student. So, but a student account cannot create their own class or own group, cannot post to a class or group if they are set to read only. So if you are a teacher, you can monitor. You can monitor that. You can control that by set your group by read only. You are as a student. If you are a student, you cannot send direct message to other students unless in a group conversation created by the teachers, which is you. So the next one, Hala, please. Parent. Okay, thank you. So, yeah, John?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you a very quick question. Is it easy? Is it easy to set up an account? Is it easy to use?
Yes, yeah. Personally, but let's talk about that, about the creation. It's very easy to create an account. It's a free to create an account. You can create your account, which is teachers, student, or parent, using your mobile phone or using your desktop, because we have two versions. I think I saw a question about that. We have two versions of applications, a version at our Android devices or iOS, iPhone devices, or we have the desktop version. It's similar to each other. Excuse me. So you can create an account using your mobile and to be honest, personally, as a technical stuff, I prefer to use the desktop version, especially if you have an assessment or assignment, or if you are a teacher and you need to add an assignment to the wall, to your class, or to the groups.
Okay. And just it's not really a question, it's just an answer to a comment we had right at the beginning about how does Edmodo compare to other asynchronous platforms. We're just using Edmodo as an example. We're not saying it's better or worse than any other asynchronous platform. We're just using it as an example to demonstrate what you can do with any asynchronous platforms, because there are general features that the platforms share. Edmodo, classrooms, etc. They're very similar. Mm-hmm. Sorry.
Yeah, no, thank you a lot. So, and now we need to know how to create, because you are a teacher and maybe you are, few of us are parents, and we have the children at the schools, at the virtual Edmodo LMS. So if you are a parent and you need to create an account to check the tasks that help to your student or to your children, so you can sign up using again your Gmail or Microsoft address account, email address, or you need a second way to create an account, a parent account, or you need to fill some tabs manually, like your phone number with the country code, which is, for example, Egypt 002 with the country code, or another way you can create the account using your email address and put your password and then confirm it. After that, then you need to fill your first name and last name. You need to enter the parent code to stay up to date on your students' class activities. You can find it on the bottom left corner of the student's profile homepage. So, if me as a student, I can share my parent code with my parent. It's very easy to do that, and you can add more than one parent code if you have more than one children. So me as a parent, and I have 3 children, so I have 3 codes for each. So what parent account can do and what cannot do? So parent account can connect to their students with a private code or invitation, view posts created by the teachers or their connected students, view upcoming and completed tasks in their students' planner, connect to more than one student's account if they have multiple children using Edmodo, send a direct message to their students or to your students, teachers, view conversation between their student and the teacher, so you can monitor your children as a parent. And parent account cannot create their own class or groups, post to a class or group, like comment on posts not directed to the parents. You cannot, as a parent, view posts that are hidden by the teacher, or you cannot send messages to other students or parents. So this is the process how to create a free account on Edmodo. Another full of information at the official website of Edmodo, which is edmodo.com. You can find more deep information about that. And before and last thing, I have some tips, some technical tips regarding using Edmodo. Just a second. So Edmodo, as I mentioned at the beginning, Edmodo has two mobile applications, one for Android and another one for iOS system. It's better to use the desktop version if you have an assessment or assignment or a task. Some countries need to use VPN, which is in order to use Edmodo. Please keep checking your date, your time in your computer. You can access the website and mobile application and don't need a high internet speed connection in order to access Edmodo, but sometimes the teachers post some videos at Edmodo, so you need more than 1 megabyte internet speed to do that. But in order to do any tasks or quizzes, so you don't need a high connection, a high internet speed connection. So this is what I have. Thanks a lot. And put your question. Yeah,
excuse me, Timur. Yeah, this is Noura. Can I ask a question about child protection here, which is very important to British Council as well, if we are promoting this. I can see that it is safe for kids to use it because the teacher is the moderator and the parent can access only their children's account, right?
Yes, yeah.
Great, thank you.
That's very great question.
It's a really good question. Thank you very much indeed, Tema. That was great. I think that the underlying message here is that, one, we're not promoting Edmodo as opposed to other platforms. We're just using it as an example. But as an example, it's not difficult to get into. It's not difficult to set up an account. The features are very familiar features for anybody that uses Facebook. So it's a good option. And if you're looking to get more confident, then have a good look around to see if this is the best option for you. Okay, back to Hala.
Thanks very much, Tamer. That was useful, and thanks very much, Noura, for raising the point of child protection. And from Tamer's description, I think it's safe because there is no direct messages between a student and the student, and it's all monitored by the teacher as well as the parent. So it should be safe. Now we're moving to the practical teaching ideas if you're using Edmodo for teaching. So after you create an account following Tamer's instructions, you need to set up a class. And I tried to create an account. It's a very straightforward, very easy tool to use. And on your left hand, you'll find this button to create a class, or alternatively this blue button to create a class. Both do the same thing. So this is our suggested work plan for you. This is how we imagine a class would look like on Edmodo. So first you create your class by using one of these two buttons here on the screen. Then you add your learners to the class. You can add them by sending them the class code, as Tamer mentioned, or you can add them by sending invitations to their emails. Then after you add your class, your students to the class, you load your class, your virtual space, your virtual class with the resources you like, the learning activities you like. One thing you can do is you can create one pinned post for announcements, to present the agendas or timetable, even to upload the syllabus or to start some class discussions. Another thing you can do is to create a poll, and at the beginning you can create a poll for wellness check, like how are you feeling today? Are you looking forward to our class online? What do you think of Present Perfect? Today's or this unit for this month is about using Present Perfect for life experiences. How do you feel about that? Do you like it? You can also create a simple quiz to check understanding. You can have it in a very simple form using MCQs or something, just to check understanding following a specific piece of information. And you can also create a fuller assignment to assess their learning or to capture their learning. And here, this is my account and this is my imaginary class, English for All. Here on the timeline, you have these two buttons, one to create a poll and one to create a wellness check. And slightly below that, you have this blue button to create a quiz or an assignment. It's very straightforward. You cannot miss it, really. Now, how do we use Edmodo to increase and enhance learner engagement? So you set up you created your account, you set up your class, you added your learners. But yeah, okay, everyone is on your class now. What's the first thing you need to do? You need to engage them. You need to generate their interest. You need to increase their motivation. You want them to stay, simply, right? So first things first, we need to bring the learners on board, and by bringing learners on board, we don't mean bringing their emails, but we also mean bringing them and make them motivated and connected to the platform. And we're talking here about learner training. We'd like to promote we'd like to train them and familiarize them with the platform and how to depend on themselves to access resources and to find out information for themselves. And we also talk here about digital literacy. And again, there's this big value that we've been referring to throughout our webinars, is the digital citizenship. We are promoting the 21st century learner, not the traditional learner. We'd like to produce a generation of learners who are aware of digital citizenship and digital literacy, and things happen around them, and have a critical mind to verify what's true and what's false information and so on. So we'd like to suggest here 3 activities for you to start and kick off your class on Edmodo, and also to generate interest amongst your learners. We're going to talk about the digital treasure hunt, or scavenger hunt, some people call it this way. We're going to talk about the resource comparison and the mini presentation piece. So the treasure hunt, our good fellow, Big Willie or William Shakespeare. So some teachers call it treasure hunt, some teachers call it scavenger hunt. So don't worry, don't get confused. Both are the same thing. So it's basically when you upload, as you can see on the screen, when you upload a sample assignment, you upload instructions, clear instructions, and you give links to resources and online websites, and you assign a set of questions for each online resource. So students are asked to go and explore these online resources and find out the answers for these questions and submit their answers to a deadline or something. So you can set them a deadline or something. So that's when it's as if they hunt for hidden gems, or they hunt for treasure. Okay, so that's one example of the treasure hunt or scavenger hunt. The other example is using the graphic organizer to compare different online resources. So you can suggest to them a topic, or you can even give them a list of topics and get them to choose the topic that appeals to them the most. So my example here is about advice to tourists coming to, let's say, advice to tourists coming to Dubai, for example. Then you need to find 3 different online resources One is a YouTube video, one is an article, and probably one is a textbook or a printed material. And they need to compare the three resources in terms of, let's say, format, audience, and the learning points. Then they fill in this table and they upload it to the platform, and they get feedback from each other and they get feedback from you. The other activity to increase the level of engagement of your learners once they step in Edmodo is to ask them to prepare a mini presentation piece, and that's an example by Hamoudi Doudi, who is actually my nephew, and he has prepared a mini presentation about his first day out after the quarantine, and then they can upload their mini presentations on Edmodo. Then other learners can have a look at it, download it, and they give feedback or comment on each other's work. We're moving now to another important point, really, and we're getting a lot of questions on this part. This is not to say that we're not going to have a fully dedicated webinar on assessment, but this is a taste of what we can do with Edmodo for assessment for learning, or AFL, or formative assessment. So the three things refer to the same thing. AFL is assessment for learning, is exactly formative assessment. So what's interesting about Edmodo quizzes is that they provide you with a variety. They have a range of question types. You have MCQs and other question types that I'll talk about in a minute. And most of these questions can be automatically graded. Not that only, but you can also attach to the quiz an image, a video, a sound clip, a PDF. So it's like they can watch these things, or they can have access to these attachments first before they answer your questions. And there is another interesting feature about Edmodo quizzes, is that the results are automatically tallied, and by tallied, it's like they give you a graphic representation of the correct and the incorrect answers to specific questions. And the example you can see on the screen now indicates that the most incorrect answers occur in the second question. So this is a diagnostic test for you. You might get an idea now that you need to give more examples on question number 2, or you need to give more explanation on the topic of question number 2. Here you can see a snapshot from my Edmodo account with the range of questions you can use. You can have multiple choice, you can have true and false, short answer, fill in the blanks, matching, and the multiple answer. So actually this is a good range of different question types. So what can we do? What can we do with the quizzes? How can we support our students, and how can we employ the assessment for learning, or the formative assessment through Edmodo quizzes? You can use the quizzes to conduct the Get to Know You survey at the beginning of the unit or at the beginning of the term. And by doing this first, you will have a good icebreaker. You will encourage the students to get to know to each other, and you will get to know your learners, and you'll get access actually to information about your learners that would support your future planning. You can so consider this as a diagnostic test, so you can stand on their weaknesses, their strengths, some interesting information about their learner profile, etc. That's another interesting activity really you can do using the Edmodo quizzes, is by designing a reading companion. It's a quiz with questions, but the questions, to answer the questions, your learners have to explore the syllabus. So that's another version of treasure hunt. So you design simple quiz with MCQs, let's say, in order to answer the questions, you need to review very quickly the syllabus, and this is what we call a reading campaign. And the benefit here is you get your students to get an idea beforehand, before you start teaching the syllabus. And also it gives you an insight about the difficult areas in the syllabus where the students struggle the most to answer questions. That's another interesting activity using the quizzes, is to sandwich your lesson between two important checkpoints. You can start by a bell ringer. It's a kind of a warmer. It's a kind of a warm-up. So you can start by a quiz to generate your learners' interest in the topic and to assess their existing knowledge or their prior knowledge by giving them a simple quiz at the beginning of the lesson. Then you can end the lesson by giving them an exit ticket, which again to assess their learning from the lesson, or even to check how they feel or their reaction towards the lesson. Like, how do you feel after you learned about using present continuous to talk about the future? And you give them simple questions like, oh, I feel great, or I feel confident, or I need more practice on that, or I don't feel, I think I don't understand well, I think I need more example. You know, it's so sandwiching your lessons between a bell ringer or a warmer and an exit text by using quizzes. You know, everyone knows that practice makes perfect. So before you expose them to the big test at the end or the big assignment at the end, you can give them practice quizzes. Actually, it's like mock test, if you like. And a good thing in Edmodo is that you can delete the practice quiz result if a student doesn't do well. So you can delete their history result and they can start over again. I think this is a good idea to reduce a little bit the level of anxiety generated by assignments and testing and all of that. The trivia quiz is something I find interesting myself, is when you ask them to send you some trivial personal information about themselves, like I have 2 dogs, or my dog is called the Strawberry, or I can cook sushi, or you know, any personal but not too personal information about themselves. Then you can take this information and design a quiz, and you can ask the learners to guess the answers about the learners, like, where do you think Omar lives? So I think Omar lives in Zamalek, for example. Or what's Omar's favorite dish? You think, and you give them multiple choice. This is a variation of the classic but the very popular find someone who. I know many of you are used to do the find someone who in the real life class, so that's another variation of it. Now moving on to how do we use Edmodo to build the learner community, and I think this is an overlooked function of the online platforms. Online platforms, guys, are not only a space to cram or to throw information, quizzes and books and assignments and sheets and articles. It's a place where learners come together and form a community and support each other and learn from each other. So one good tip we'd like to give you today is that please meet your learners where they are. You know who you're teaching? Do you know who you're teaching? You're teaching Generation Z. You know, we have so far 3 generations, the Y, the X, Y, and Z. You're teaching now Generation Z, and Generation Z or Generation Z or Generation Zers, if they are called different names, are students who were born in 2000 and something, 2010, for example. These are also called the post-millennials. And guess what? guess what they like to do? They like to use GIFs, and I started to really fall in love with GIFs. They are so powerful, and I started to believe in the power of GIFs. So you can use GIFs for daily check-ins, celebrate success, and GIFs actually a kind of images, but they are animated. So you can use them, you as a teacher, you can use them for daily check-ins, celebrating success, and informally check understanding. Your learners can also share GIFs on Edmodo, and they can use them to model the reaction to the end of a novel, or explain how they feel about an upcoming test, or illustrate their opinion in a debate or a discussion. And here is what one of the teachers around the world think about the use and the power of GIFs. They think it's a great way to express how we feel, and this is very important in building a classroom culture and make the online class as one unit and establish rapport and positive relationship. And this is actually one of the coolest GIFs. One of the coolest GIFs I found. Yoda is telling his learners, he's actually motivating them and assuring them that they are learning and they're taking their learning seriously. I can imagine now he's saying this with his voice, learning you are. So that's an example of a GIF. And the good thing about Edmodo is that it accepts posting GIFs. So you can post the GIFs there. It accepts this option. It has this option. The second thing about the learner community is to create a sense of community. You brought 100 students on your online class. How do you keep them together? How do you maintain their positive relationship together? That's a big question. Again, don't give up on your daily routines. The routines you used to do in your face-to-face classes are the same. Please keep doing them. You can find creative ways to get the learners to showcase parts of their lives. Activities like interview your dad, interview your parent, interview a sibling. Tell us about a good story from your childhood. Take a picture of your favorite story and post it on Edmodo and talk about it. Respect your learner choice. Don't insist on something. Don't insist that they send pictures of themselves, or then don't insist that they video record themselves talking about something. If somebody doesn't feel comfortable sending videos recording themselves or sending their pictures explaining a process or something, don't insist on that. Respect their choices. Don't forget your sense of humor. Keep telling them jokes, and the memes now are very good tool, and they are useful. They are automatically made, and they are already made. Just take them from the internet and post them there. Really make sure you maintain a respectful digital environment, and you can get them to sign a digital citizenship pledge, or you can simply agree on a classroom contract, or you can simply agree on an etiquette or some ground rules, but make sure you maintain a respectful environment during the class discussions. And that's a very good point, really. Don't forget to reward your learners for positive behavior or for their achievements. And the GIF you're going to see on the screen now actually is how to, it shows you how to reward your student a badge, and that's a very interesting feature in Edmodo. So technically you find your learner profile. Our fellow here is called Franklin. So the teacher clicks on Franklin's profile and they go straight to a word badge. Then the teacher chooses an appropriate badge to Franklin. Then the teacher awards Franklin a badge, and it appears on Franklin's profile. So that's an interesting feature in Edmodo. Also, there is, John, I feel you want to say something.
Did you hear me hovering there? Yeah, I'm sorry about that. I did wonder what happens after we finish with Generation Z. We're at the end of the alphabet then, aren't we? I don't know what happens next. There's a couple of really interesting questions that have come in that I'd really like your opinion on. I can ask them now, or we can wait until you reach the end of this section. What would you prefer to do?
Let's have one of them.
Okay then. So a good question about age range. The question really is about what age range is virtual learning suitable for, and the cost, if you like, of working only in the remote delivery environment is the ability for young kids to learn how to use pen and paper. So there's a question there about age range. We're going to have a webinar in this series which is focused on working with parents. So I suppose increasingly the question about those basic skills that you can't acquire in the remote environment, that's a question I suppose that will be increasingly asked of parents to support, and we'll be talking a little bit about that. But age range, what are your thoughts on that, Hala?
That's a very good question. Thank you, whoever posted this question. But this actually takes us, without even realizing it, to the hybrid model or the blended model. I mean, if you depend only on one platform, yes, you will miss out on some of the interesting age groups who couldn't benefit from your online teaching. And let's face it, necessity is the mother of invention, and if we have to teach remotely, we need to find ways to include all the age groups. We can use extra resources to support us in this difficult mission. We can depend on the parent support. Let's not really forget that. And we can also depend on a blended approach. It doesn't have to be 100% online. For example, to promote a child's motor skills, and if you'd like the child to use the pen and paper, you can still do that. You can still ask them to draw a poster or to write something with a pen or a pencil and a paper. Then a parent can take a picture of this work and they can post it to you on Edmodo or on WhatsApp or whatever platform they're using. So it has to be a combination of ways and a combination of resources. Why? Because we want to include all learners. Again, using digital and using the technology doesn't mean that we leave somebody behind. We need to find more and more ways every day to include everyone. But we'll talk more about this, especially on the parent support and using the available resources in the surroundings of the child themselves. I hope this answered the questions partially.
Absolutely.
I'm amazed how your questions are linked to my presentation, really, because this question about leaving nobody behind and getting support from parents and supporting students at very young age, this takes us automatically to the social emotional learning and the social emotional learning resources available on Edmodo. So if you go to your account and if you click on this button, it says Discover, you'll get access to a wonderful collection of social emotional learning, and it actually helps the teacher and the learners to deal with the stress and anxiety caused by the quarantine and the lockdown and the isolation. There is a very interesting range of activities that support the students emotionally and socially, and there is that fantastic application that I'm personally planning to use is Happy Not Perfect, and it's a kind of an app, and it gives you skills on how to cope with the new reality after COVID. It's all about mindfulness and mindfulness activities and things you can apply in the classroom. So Discover, then Social Emotional Learning Collection and Happy Not Perfect. It's really interesting. I want to be happy, not perfect. Just think about it. Happiness is way more important than perfection. We're moving to another important aspect of Edmodo, really is Edmodo and teacher collaboration, and we are building more on the idea of creating communities and the sense of belonging and being a part of a group and being a part of something. So if you would like to think about using Edmodo for your professional development, you can create your own professional development group. Again, if you go to your account, on your left hand, create a group. And this is if you're a teacher educator and if you'd like to, if you'd like to train a group of teachers or share some interesting resources with them. Or you can join an existing professional development group if you have the URL of the group or if you have the code of the group. Interestingly, Edmodo is using hashtags, and as I believe in the power of GIFs, I also believe in the power of hashtags. So on your left hand in your Edmodo account, you'll find the top popular hashtags. So you can click on any of them and follow them. Or you can explore more by clicking on explore hashtags, and hashtags are the topics that are going viral on Edmodo and recommended by teachers, so you can follow them and get updated with the latest information there. I personally found the hashtag Edmodo tips is very interesting. If you follow this hashtag, you'll get exposed to a lot of Edmodo tips and a lot of interesting ideas on how to use Edmodo. Don't forget the Discover tab. It's there. It's in your account on the top of your account bar, and it takes you to ready-made resources recommended and tried and tested by other teachers. So go and check that out. It's like a library of existing resources. When you find something posted or recommended by a teacher, you can also connect with other teachers. You can send this teacher a connection request. It's like LinkedIn, for example, or Facebook for Business. Then the teacher can accept or refuse the request. Then you can talk to each other about useful tips or useful classroom techniques. And if you're using Twitter, or if you'd like to use Twitter in the future, please follow the hashtag Edmodo chat. Teachers around the globe, around the world are sharing tips and ideas about how to use Edmodo for online classes. Hashtag Edmodo chat. Something we've been referring to throughout our webinars is the online safety. So we're going to give you a very quick recap on that. So on Edmodo, there is no direct messaging between learners. So learner A cannot send a message to learner B. This doesn't exist. So this is safety. Please do not post group codes publicly. If you're establishing a group and you have a code, find a way to share the codes privately, not publicly. After you bring all your learners on board and after all of them join the group, lock the group codes. No one else can use them afterwards. You can spend some time monitor the learner posts and filter them and delete inappropriate content if you like. And you can always use the read-only status when needed. If it's an announcement or if it's something you'll get inappropriate responses to, you can always set it on the read-only status. And please don't forget to have a code of conduct from the beginning or any form of netiquette. And I'm sharing with you now a ready-made poster by the British Council. You can find it on the British Council Learn English Kids or the British Council Learn English Teens, and it's a kind of lovely poster with 8 tips to stay safe online. And you can post that on Edmodo and leave it there. You can have it even as a pinned post or something. So today we promised to cover, and probably next webinar we'll be talking about blended learning. This is going to be our September webinar, which we believe will coincide with the reopening plans of schools across MENA. And these are some useful resources for you guys. The usual resources. We encourage you to join the British Council Teaching English Facebook page, the British Council Teaching English website, especially the fully dedicated page for COVID-19, supporting teachers and teacher educators, the British Council Teacher Community Group on Facebook, and the Teacher Community website, and some useful articles on teaching English, on how to use Edmodo. And please check out this particular resource, the commonsense.org. They have curricula ready for digital citizenship if you fancy teaching a lesson to your learners about how to become an appropriate digital citizen. And of course, the official Edmodo website for teachers, where you can get more ideas and more tips on how to use Edmodo. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Hala, thank you so much indeed. That was really, really interesting. And it answered a question, I think, in the last slide and on online safety around this idea of controllable. Is the remote learning environment controllable? And then clearly it is, and there are steps that you can take to make sure that it's controllable in the same way. And I think this is a really, really important point to make before we finish. And I think as general takeaway from across the 3 webinars that we've listened to so far, that it's about being principled. So you would take steps in a face-to-face classroom to make sure that your students are safe, that they are being respectful towards each other. Those principles apply equally to the remote delivery situation as well. And it's important, I think, as we move into, as you were saying, probably a more blended learning kind of situation, that we hang on to those really good fundamental principles about teaching, that teaching needs to be purposeful. You need to have learning aims and learning outcomes. You need to be encouraging engagement. You need to be motivating your students. You need to be encouraging them to be independent. So while the medium may have changed, the idea of good teaching really in the remote delivery context remains the same as it does for face-to-face. And I think you've covered those elements really, really well and seen how they apply to the remote delivery environment as well. And I think just to finish, that the idea of combination, I think, is such an important word. It's a combination of platforms, it's a combination of techniques, it's a combination of face-to-face and remote delivery, because students, learners, people are individuals and they're different, so have different preferences, different approaches, different likes, different interests. So that variety that the remote delivery tools adds to is an important element to hang on to, and one of those principles of good teaching, that it's around variety and bringing in different ways of engaging and reaching out and helping students to learn. And it's about learning. It's not about games as a thing in itself. It's not about gamification. It's not about distraction. These are tools for serious learning. And if we are serious about our teaching, then we also need to be serious about our commitment to these new ways of working, to become more confident, more skilled, and able to make the best use of the tools that our learners, that our students are already using in their daily lives anyway. Brilliant. So thank you so much indeed, Hala. Thank you everybody for all the questions that you've been bringing in as well. We've got a couple of announcements before we finish. I'd like to hand over to my colleague Nora.
Thank you, John, and thank you all for joining this call. Just an announcement about the 3 webinars we delivered so far. The one about using Teams, about using WhatsApp, Facebook, and this 3rd one is about Edmodo. If you have tried anything from these 3 webinars, please let us know, and you find it successful now in September as well, you will start teaching. If you find them useful, you tried them, modified them, adapted them to your context, please let us know. Contact any of our team in your country, British Council team in your country. We are organizing a conference on Teachers' Day, World Teachers' Day, but it will be on 10th of October. And if you would like to share your experience, please contact the British Council team in your country about these 3 webinars. Thank you.